Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to this webinar on the future of commercial real estate and the built environment in the post-COVID era. We would like to first thank all our panelists for joining us today. Mr. Irfan Razack, CMD, Prestige Group. Mr. Raj Menda, Corporate Chairman, RMZ Group. Mr. Yatin Patel, Founder, DSP Design Associates. Mr. Chandnani, MD, CBRE. Mr. Arun Khanna, Senior Director, United Health Group. Today, I have such a heavyweight set of panelists that the only one person here that probably needs an introduction is me. I'm from the Featherlite Group, and we are a 55-year-old furniture company present in 60 locations across India and a few international locations. We currently fit out about 5 million square feet a year. In the earlier days, we had invested in lands and done joint developments. Today, we have developed about 1.2 million square feet under our brand and have 6 lakh square feet under construction and have another 2 million on the drawing board. Now, let me start introducing our panelists. To begin with, Mr. Irfan Razack, Chairman and MD of the Prestige Group. Everybody knows him. So let me share something that you probably don't know. He is my brother Jawah's schoolmate and a family friend for over 50 years. A visionary who has had a large role in creating Bangalore's landmarks and shaping its skyline. In the earlier days, we have done deals over handshakes and on paper napkins. We have today completed 4 JDs, and the 5th of 1.5 million square feet mixed-use development is being undertaken. And I must say, he has made us a lot of money. Reputation, clarity, integrity, and timely delivery of projects are his hallmarks. Thank you for taking the time to join us today, Irfan. Our second panelist is Mr. Raj Menda, the real estate's very own Richard Gere. He's been a friend of mine from our school days, so I will spare him the embarrassment and not go back in time. I totally admire his achievements and what he's been able to deliver in a short span of 18 years. Starting from scratch and delivering over 50 million square feet is in itself an amazing achievement. The Menda family has also been doing a lot of impactful CSR over the years. Thanks, Raj, for being here. Yatin Patel, again, a friend for over 20 years, and they have designed some of the outstanding campuses and interior projects. He chairs DSP Design Associates as founder and principal. Having established the practice 3 decades ago as a first-generation architect, globally, DSP has witnessed consistent growth on the global rankings for 6 consecutive years. Currently standing now at number 55 among top 100 architectural practices worldwide, and the 3rd among top 10 architectural practices in Central Asia. Thanks, Yatin, for joining us. Mr. Arun Khanna has had more than 30 years of work experience in the real estate field and is Senior Director, Real Estate Asia Pac for the United Health Group. He has also spent 8 years as the head of real estate in HSBC and has worked at several household names like Usha, Insignia Brook, and Bennett & Coleman Group. UHG currently employs over 30,000 people across India and is a large global healthcare insurance provider. He is one of the most senior and respected CRE heads in India today. Thank you for being with us today. Mr. Chandnani, a globally networked, thorough professional who has been with CBRE now for the last 23 years. Since 1994, the operations have grown to include more than 10,000 professionals across 10 offices,
Signal.
with a presence in over 80 cities in
Manu,
India.
will you?
Yeah. Sorry? His knowledge of real estate stands unparalleled. He is your go-to man whenever you are looking at an unbiased view on real estate. He will steer you in a direction which you probably would not have considered. Thanks for being here, Ram. All attendees, thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions, please do not raise your hand on the app and go directly to the Q&A section and type in your question. We will do our best to answer your question in the Q&A session at the end. I would now like to open the panel discussion with my first question addressed to all the panelists. What has been the impact of COVID on the commercial real estate sector in your respective fields? Mr. Irfan, would you like to start off, please?
You want me to be the opening batsman?
Yes, sir. As always, you're the star today.
See, if you are talking of commercial real estate office, as of today, fortunately for not only Bangalore, for most of parts of the country where the office IT space is being built, we were almost in a zero vacancy position. Maybe we are in the late 90s or something like that. And the vacancy levels were between 5 and 6%. It was all like mostly everything was leased. So there's nothing much, there's no stress in the market as of now for properties that have already been built. Now we have to see what's going to happen for the future, how the demand will come, where the demand will come from, and where existing, because now in the leased also, what we really had in the office space, we had a lot of co-working companies that had come in. IndiCube, WeWork, co-working, Raj's own co-working, then I mean the co-works, that is, and then many others, many names were there, or even a brand called Office. All of them were offering this co-working spaces. Now these were like hotel rooms. You come in, you log in, and you start working from there, and they were actually paying rent to you, and they're fitting themselves out, huge capex, and in turn they were doing the arbitrage of running the center. Now these co-working spaces are the ones that got hit actually quite badly, because the type of traffic that was coming into them became slow, and they were all temporary leases, and they could walk out. Of course, there's one more version in that, where companies were telling these co-working spaces to set this up, and they were called managed offices, where the entire, instead of the company taking the trouble of doing the capex and running the office themselves, they only had the problem of they didn't have that huge issue of managing the office. Somebody else was doing that for them, and there was some arbitrage which they didn't mind paying. So that I don't think there's any danger in the managed offices. But co-working has taken a beating for now. But one thing, let me tell you, now there's a lot of talk about office space demand dropping, rent dropping, and people be working from home. I think now, how many people do we have locked in here today's seminar? 1343 to be precise. We are all locked up in the house for last 1 month. I interact with my teams almost on a daily basis, and I'm in many webinars on a daily basis. Now, people are getting tired. They want to go out of the house. It's no longer fancy to start working from home, because apart from working from home, the entire the atmosphere is not conducive. It's good and fancy to say it for a week, for a few days, but on a continued basis, I think everybody needs their own space. The spouses need the space, the children need the space. I've been in some webinars where if you don't unmute them, what happens is you can hear vessels getting washed, you can hear children shouting. In that atmosphere, I don't think any work can get done. It's only very fancy to say work from home. I think both Ram and Raj should be able to tell me that. Yes, now there is in the new era, and this era also, please believe you me, yes, COVID-19 is not going to go away anyway very fast. It's there to stay. I think it's there to stay permanently until we find a vaccine or a cure for it. And that's a good 9 months to 12 months away. So till then, COVID-19, it's a new norm. We'll be having these lockdowns opening up, lockdowns opening up till the vaccine comes. And if the vaccine doesn't come, then we'll ourselves need a vaccine for ourselves, because business has to go on and business can't be worked in a lockdown mode. Having said that, I believe that India is on a huge opportunity. India has handled this COVID situation fantastically well. They have shown the world that they have contained this virus, maybe with lack of testing or because of less of testing. Ignorance is bliss sometimes. But in case even a certain portion of the population gets infected, the immunity builds up. It's another phase in our life, and that too will pass. For the time being, you will have that stress. You have the stress in retail in a huge way. You have the stress in hospitality in a big way. I will not go into those asset classes at the moment, because today we are confining ourselves only to office. Now, coming to office, what really again happens is during this period when the cure is not there, when the vaccine is not there, which is a little few months away or maybe a year away, what really happens is people will be working in shift system, because what will happen is you will have to have 1/3 the staff coming or half the staff coming in. That's the only way in an existing infrastructure which is already built, the social distancing can be maintained, because people can't sit close to each other. Like even in call centers now, they have to have that. So the density in offices actually will reduce. The density will reduce. So the requirement of office space will actually go up. It won't go down. The demand will also raise. The amount of square footage, what the particular company wanted. Now with all these COVID precautions, they will be asking for much, much more space than the lesser space. Of course, now the whole world is in a flux. The whole world, entire world's economy is in shambles. Business will pick up, things will pick up, but India is in a distinct advantage over others.
Fantastic, sir. I really like the optimism, and because these questions have been doing the rounds. Terrific, sir. Thank you so much. Could I request Raj for your opinion, Raj?
Yeah, hi everybody. I think the way I have looked at it, the current situation actually happened quite rapidly. It really did not give the multinationals, or in fact, many people a chance to plan what they should do in case such a situation ever arose. This work from home, luckily, there were technologies like using Zoom and so on, which some companies were able to cope up. But keeping the firewalls, which I found, which most companies talk about, including Zoom, which has been compromised heavily, which is repeatedly written about. I did see that a lot of companies got into a serious jam when it comes to working from home. Although what Irfan said is correct, it's one thing to say work from home, but the reality was, I would say 99% of the customers did get disrupted, especially those multinationals who were providing online service to their counterparts in other parts of the world. Did get into a serious situation, but we did the best we could. We ensured at least the servers were functioning actively. There may key people who needed access into the buildings, because the buildings were no doubt kept open 24/7, and so that they could access the servers to keep at least the servers running, so that everybody who was working from home, and especially when the online meetings started way out late in the night, it was all available for them to get going. So, and the good part is, although Irfan spoke about the stress on the rent side, I want to just update him on two things. One is, likewise, we also did 99% of our rent collection for the year. except some of the F&B services, which obviously we're struggling to pay. And on the co-working side and co-works, which belongs to us, I wanted to inform Irfan that we did an 85% rent collection, which is the right place to be on in both these asset classes. But having said that, I think going forward, although we'll be talking about it a little later in detail, but I think the most important point to be addressed by all of us who are leaders in our own right is to how to mitigate the concerns that the employees entering our building should step out of their homes and get to work, to ensure that the hygiene level is adequate. There's adequate scanning done, so that by mistakenly office parks do not let in people who have got corona, to see that how we can help tracking this data. These all the concerns they have before they step to work. I think the later part, I think since you asked us to elaborate it, I can explain how we are planning to do all this. But I do hope that this event does not land up losing business for our country, and people don't start looking at alternatives to go to other places. One company I did find, that is Morgan Stanley, which is one of the big global real estate occupiers, has said that they would like to reduce their global real estate footprint now that they find that some of their divisions are comfortable working from home. Although that's being reviewed, but I do see this has made a lot of people sit up and see how many such businesses can actually work from home, and may to reduce costs may compel themselves to do that and only meet for meetings. So I do find that there's going to be a change in thinking. Let's hope it's not for the worse. And like Irfan said, since they require more space to sit in, and because of the distancing required within the offices, they will actually end up taking more space. Unfortunately, it will cost them a lot more. Anyway, so this is just my opening remarks on the thoughts of what I feel is is the current situation as of now.
Thanks, Raj. Very, very insightful. Can I request Ram to please give us your perspective from an ITC perspective, please?
Thank you. I think what Irfan and Raj mentioned are very, very true. I think India is very well positioned as a leading outsourcing destination, no doubt about it. While we've seen the office segment really grow over the years, and with over 60 million square feet of gross absorption last year. If you look at even the first quarter numbers, Jan and Feb really saw some good absorption. And in March, we saw a decline in absorption purely because clients already started to visualize partial work from home with the China situation and the global situation. We already started seeing a lot of cases in China from Jan, and that really cautioned a lot of occupiers to start doing some amount of BCP already in the India context. While the European markets have gone through their pain and the American markets are going through the current challenges right now, the situation is early to analyze on what global will do, while there's a lot of talk on working from home and obviously looking at different technologies to enhance your capability to work in operations. I think India continues to stand as a large offshoring outsourcing destination. And the feedback, even during this lockdown period, that we are getting from all our large corporate occupiers is that they will continue to grow in India. And even, in fact, during the lockdown period, we've seen clients give approval to go ahead and space even during this lockdown period. So very positive from an India context. Obviously, you've got to look at location strategies, portfolio strategies going forward, potential hub and spoke models, which I will talk through later on. But India is still on a positive note from an offshoring outsourcing perspective. While the most important thing that clients are going through right now is the safety and security of the people, and how to see how they'll be able to function optimally right now during this lockdown period. While India announced the lockdown earlier in March, some of the companies like the US did it much, much later. Australia is doing it now. Singapore's gone through the second phase of lockdown. But if you look at some of the learnings from China and the feedback from the minute China has actually opened up post this situation, the rental market is picked up again. You've seen clients out on inspections. You've seen the increase in volumes for lease transactions, not just in the office sector, including retail. So the learnings from China are positive because that's the only country where we've seen positive impact, and it's just barely been a month for China so that they've been opened up. It's still early to say, but no doubt there are some decisions that will get pushed out, which have been pushed out, but I will talk further during the session.
Thank you, Ram. Thank you so much. Could I bring in Arun now to shed some light on this from a occupier's mindset, please?
Yeah, sure, Manohar, and thank you. Can you hear me loud?
Yes.
Hello?
Clear.
Yeah, all right, okay. So this obviously, is the biggest disruption that the world has seen since World War II. And possibly the reaction time was even lower. So I think totally unprepared. And so obviously, on the lighter side, we have all discovered that Chinese food is dangerous for world's health. So I guess this came as a surprise. But I'll start with optimism because the kind of experiment or the pilot which has happened in terms of distributing your workplace to thousands of homes couldn't have been possible otherwise. So this has been a big plus. And of course, we'll see the results over the next few quarters and probably few years. But offshoring has been done, and working from large centers, probably 10,000 kilometers away or 5,000 kilometers away. But now further distributing it to let's say 1,000 homes within that location is something which has been done for the first time at such a large scale. And I must share that this has given some extremely positive results. Like in Philippines, we do almost entirely call center, and we have 15,000 call center executives there working for our company, and we are 94% productively work from home. In India, we do technology in a big way, almost 10,000 software engineers, etc. work for us. And we are at 99%, almost 100% successful productive work from home. And this has been going on since last few weeks. It's not a data of 1 day or 2 days. And for BPO, which is India, almost 15,000 to 17,000 odd people working in India doing BPO. We are at 84% productive work from home. And that 84% could have easily increased to beyond 90% if some of the border restrictions were not there. Because we are not able to provide support, technical, somebody's PC or laptop has conked off, etc. So support, spares, and borders, material movement, etc. So a huge success story as far as doing work differently is concerned. Now going forward, and this is a real estate panel. So what does that mean? Is that everybody, the leadership, not only our company, but I assume the entire industry would be analyzing the data on what kind of risks this exposes us to, whether it is data protection or possibility of hacking, or of course not everybody is as privileged as the panelists today, because people have small homes, probably single room tenements, etc. Don't have full facilities and infrastructure. Even noise is a big issue, and quality of broadband or internet, etc. So all those things will need to be analyzed, and I'm sure nobody is going to rush into this. But I would not be surprised that if it work from home, I am giving a very wide band, becomes a way of life, probably from anywhere to 5 to 50% for most companies. Why this broad range of 5 to 50%? Because of the sensitivities and the risk-taking capacities of different sectors. Like a banking sector may have a very almost nil risk-taking capacity as far as data protection, etc. is concerned. While there may be a lot of other companies, dealing in FMCG or probably even e-commerce, etc., who don't care, or for whom it doesn't really matter much. So it's going to be a new normal, most definitely. where we'll be, I'm sure every company is talking to their respective IPC partners and their even developer partners, etc. And there will be consolidation, there would be contraction. As far as the real estate portfolio is concerned, at least in the near future, and then it stabilizes over next 6 months, 1 year, and then of course it starts growing. Because as far as I think, from India perspective and India business perspective, I'm very, very bullish, because I don't think this will lead to contraction as far as business is concerned. ITS business is concerned, that will continue to grow, probably at a faster pace, because everybody would be under a lot of pressure to reduce costs, etc. Back home, and the principal companies and the wherever they are located. And on top of that, I see a major boom happening in manufacturing, which will be whether it is domestic manufacturing or a lot of companies trying to de-risk their manufacturing bases. I was speaking to somebody from China yesterday, and they said that textile companies whose almost entire supply chain was based in China, whether it is European fashion houses, etc. So they are already thinking of de-risking, and inquiries are being generated, and this should lead to some shifts to in countries like India, etc. So that will happen, and I think there's a lot of anger against how this started, and possibly the information, etc. should have been better. So I think that also will lead, should turn out to be positive for a lot of industries, and especially manufacturing in India.
Thanks, Arun. Thank you so much. Very interesting perspective. I'm sure that will benefit a lot of occupiers that have also logged in today. Thank you so much. Our final panelist is Yatin. Yatin, could I request you to give us your standpoint from an architectural view?
Well, thanks, Manohar. And it's interesting and great to hear that all the folks on this panel are bullish and positive on the India story, that the real estate market is still on an uptick, and we will see an uptick going forward as well. From a design perspective, I think we're talking about two different strategies and putting two different categories of design in place because of COVID. We have the first strategy that looks into what happens when people go back to work after the lockdown, and how do we provide safe and healthy an office environment that is conducive to that. And on the longer term is how do you make that as a permanent feature. So there's two different ways on that. I think also, like some of the panelists have mentioned, that the spatial requirements are also going to be increased now because of social distancing. So there are various organizations that have done a lot of, are doing a lot of research on spatial requirements. Of course, nothing is certain. It is completely uncertain how things will pan out and when it will pan out. People are already started calling it as VEP, that is virus endpoint. We don't know when that will happen. So what will be the cutoff time between the short-term and the long-term strategies? So, but in the long-term and short-term, spatial requirements will definitely change. We will see areas at a different verticals and different segments, be it from financial to BPO to call centers. They will shift from the existing 60 to 80 square feet per person to upwards of 100 square feet per person. So there will be an increased demand for additional spaces. The office layouts also currently from the open plan, from the extremely open and agile plans, will also shift. There will be a shift more towards cubicles, so that people have independent workspaces. We're looking at a lot of furniture manufacturing who've already come out with screens and panels. And in doing so, what could happen is that the entire visual openness of offices may go down. So there's some people who are already talking about transparent acrylic panels as well. We will see the use of meeting rooms diminish with technology and people working from home and getting used to Zoom meetings and teleconferencing. The need, and because of social distancing, the amount of people that can use a existing meeting room will reduce. People will shift towards virtual meetings, and then therefore meeting spaces will reduce, or the need for them will reduce. They could even probably get converted into private offices, because there is going to be that cultural shift from an open office environment to a little more backward trend towards more enclosed kind of offices. So that's a big shift that we see in terms of design. Furniture design also, like I said, will change in terms of materials that will be used. There will be the need of antimicrobial surfaces. There will be the need of touchless accesses, elevators, and so on and so forth. So there is going to be a huge transformation in the design front. Also in the way we deliver design is also going to change. Now I know this is pertinent to the entire construction industry, but we will, because of social distancing, the amount of labor that would be required at sites will be required to be diminished. So we will see a lot of modularity in terms of design. So we will need to actually have factory finished buildings which are created. So you will see a lot of steel structures that will get created, which will get only assembled at site. So you reduce the number of people that are working on site. So the entire industry will shift towards a much more modular design, and thereby compressing the time also in which we deliver projects and the finish also.
Fabulous. Thank you, Yatin. Thank you. Great insights. I mean, both inside and outside the buildings, both we're going to go modular. It's hopefully the new future. Thank you so much. I'm sure everybody here appreciates those views. I would now like to move on to the next round of questions, which are specific to each panelist. I would like to ask my first question to, again, Irfan in this room now. Can I begin, Irfan, with you again?
Sure.
As interest rate decline in India and across the world, what should investors in commercial real estate do in the short term and the long term? We have a lot of investors on this group call today, so I'm trying to address very varied questions. So please, sir.
This has always been a question. Now, you know what, Manu? Of course, we've been doing this strata sales. Investors have been investing in office property. We do the lease sublease model, and investors are getting fabulous returns. I must tell you, my investors will be getting something like 36 or even 48% return for properties which they invested about 15 years ago. Per annum I'm talking about. Of course, as you go now, because capital values have increased, rents have gone up. Now we don't know again how rents will behave after post-COVID. But then I believe the good rate of return as far as the investors are concerned, they should be happy with between 7 and 8%. But then there will be always a spike, and that's how that magic number of whatever a number I told you earlier will happen. But having said that, today I believe that a new normal has come in terms of REITs. Okay, there's been one REIT only in India so far. I'm sure Raj will do a REIT very soon. I don't know whether we'll do a REIT or not. But then the REIT is a very different way of investing into real estate, makes it very liquid. makes it very nimble in the sense that you can get in and get out whenever you want, and also helps you participate in getting be part of the real estate space itself. Why REIT will be good is because then the strata sale issue does not happen. Long term, there should not be any legal issues that come in. In a REIT, what happens is the entire development is owned by one company, it is managed by one company, and the overall look, feel, maintenance also can be periodically enhanced, and the life of the development itself goes up. In a strata sale, there will be some difference of opinion. Some people don't participate in the maintenance and the overall upkeep, then there's an issue. So it's a balance. And since now, like you said, since interest rates, when you mentioned interest rates, I believe you're talking about FD rates. Obviously, real estate anytime is a great investment, whether residential or office. Of course, office gives you a far better return. But not only do you get the return in terms of the monthly rentals, you also do get the appreciation in the overall capital value. So, and you know, this you should never look at your portfolio with a very short-term vision. For a short-term vision, it could be REITs, but then REITs is still a long way to stabilize in India. I believe if you keep investing in office property, you can't go wrong. Yes, there could be some periods of lull, some periods where you get less return, some periods where you don't get return. But in the long term, if you play the game long term, there's no way that you can ever say that you burnt your fingers or burnt your hands. You'll only be smiling all the way to the bank. All my investors who've invested with us have always not smiled the way to the bank, they've laughed the way to the bank. And I think they'll continue to do that.
Thanks, Irfan. You've taken us from 30% to 7%, and I'm in that journey with you even today. Thank you so much. My next question, I'm going to address to Raj again. Raj, what will you be doing differently to attract A, foreign investors, and B, while listing a REIT? Did you get me, Raj?
So I think, yes, thanks, Manu. I think when I say what we do differently, I would like to touch upon, the concerns currently which are faced by our occupiers. That is basically the employees who will enter the parks. And, we coincidentally had developed an app which is called the RMG Next app, which was basically an app to collaborate with all the occupiers of the building, that is the employees basically walking in and out of our parks, so that they have a contactless entry, and the car access is contactless, it's a number plate recognition, they can access the turnstile, they can access the doorways and so on contactlessly. Now, coincidentally, even though the MEX app was designed for multiple other applications, one of its application, which was to make it a contactless entry, is now being enhanced in the next few days, so that it has the advantage of making it even that when you're entering your lift, you don't have to press the lift button on your phone app, because see, 99.99% of our occupiers of our parks have smartphones. So, all will be downloading this MEX app, which is currently already being used by a substantial number of occupiers. And even, the lift access, which we typically did by pressing a button, you will be doing it by pressing it on screen on your phone to go to your particular floor. So the objective of the exercise currently is to see that we achieve a few objectives because through this MEX app. One is to see that it is contactless entry from the time you get out of your car till the time you get onto your work desk. So, to see that all the technical points of entry. Secondly, and importantly, is what is called contact tracing. To that, even if you went to pick up a coffee, the MEX app, we currently also made it a provision so that you can, actually buy your food and reserve your food. Sorry, can you hear me, Manu?
No, but sorry,
Manu, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Manu? Just put a
go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Max app also coincidentally provided for being able to order your food at the various restaurants and cafes that are there in our various parks, and also reserve tables for yourself. Now, by virtue of using this app, now it is going to become more and more imperative that because your food delivery also will be done contactless, either if you book your food through our app, or if you book it through Swiggy. We have working on a contactless system where your food can get picked up by yourself. Even when you reserve a table, you can turn up exactly at the time, so there is no crowding happening in front of the restaurant, which typically we Indians are used to bunching up in front of restaurants waiting for a table. It's going to be avoided because you will be told at what time your table will be made available to you, and you can come to there. So just coincidentally, our app was there. It was designed obviously just for the betterment for the community building within all the people working in the park. But now we just, by a little bit of enhancement, they're able to see that we make this entire COVID and adaptive so that it becomes contactless in multiple ways. Also, in terms of contact tracing, it does help because especially when it is a lot of paranoia when it comes to companies and employees. No doubt employees a little more as to how will this, how safe can I be when I enter my workspace? And in terms of companies, how can it be contactless? How can I do contact tracing? Because so what happens is by virtue of replaying the app, as to by God forbid one employee has had a COVID subsequently, it becomes easy by retracing it on the app as to from the time he entered the building to which restaurant he went to, because on which table he sat, and so on and so forth. So the entire thing gets integrated and can help giving you data. Instead of locking down the entire park, if you find anybody having COVID, you can do a quick recall on the contact tracing as to where he has been, and so that you isolate only those aspects of it rather than going very rampantly and isolating the entire park. We're trying to see, can you only isolate that floor of that building in the maximum case, and not even the entire building or not in the entire park. So these are the few things. Like one thing which I know for sure, which is going to be stopped in the park, is we also had valet service in some of our parks. Now that is obviously going to cause a point of concern, because when the keys are collected by a driver, after the keys are deposited in a safe place, then many people handling your vehicle by the time you take it and it comes back to you. So that's one thing which I find is going to stop in our parks. The other thing which we are doing is even the temperature scanning which we are doing. We have a separate room created in all the parks. So the moment they find someone who is has got a temperature, whether it's got this regular fever or has COVID, obviously the person taking your temperature doesn't know that. He has to compel to stop there and take the person straight away into the room. And then we're having a procedure as to how that person has to be taken away to the hospital, straight out of there. So he's not allowed into the park. So just basically trying to build comfort at every stage to see that the people accessing the park are compliant at least to the basic level. And the contact tracing, which coincidentally is a feature which can be is being built into the app by virtue of using our app, helps you to find out in the last few days or weeks, starting from 4th, as to where he has been within the park, to help to isolate the movement within the park. Also, we are starting the visitors who are entering the buildings will be asked to the pertinent questions, but in the last 14 days, they have traveled overseas to some of the restricted countries, and also whether they are coming out of the restricted zones of within the city. And if they ask, then the person has been asked to wait. Then he will, even though he may not have any fever, but the security manager has to call up the concerned person he's going to meet and ask him that this is what he's saying. You still want him to be allowed into the building or not? So if the person says, no, I'm not happy with these two answers, he will ask him to leave, even though he may be a visitor coming, because these two questions are important in the current day situation. So these are things we're trying to put in to see that even the visitors don't bring in unwanted stuff into the building. So so apart from that, I think the other thing which we had coincidentally brought in through the Max app was the public transportation, and we integrated it so that the people can reserve a seat on the bus or the vehicle being transferring them through the Max app, which is already being done. So this was again a contactless system, and also helped the people not crowding up. Actually, it was more designed so that you waste less time in a day, so that you can get out of the park, which typically you waste time on the road, but at least don't waste time waiting for the vehicle to take you. So at least we made that this thing. So we found that also is another contactless item which is getting into place. So I find that when your question was how do you foresee this as for your multinational investors are concerned, who will be in future looking at investing with us. I feel that keeping in mind that the collection of the rent has been good, the parks were kept open. Of course, people could not come despite the COVID, the 99% rent collection. The new places we have put in for sustainability and for well-being, which has been put in place by our group, will for sure make it comfortable for the occupiers and for the employees entering our parks. So I have a feeling the investors will see that in a brighter way and give preference over people who are not able to provide these facilities. And even occupiers will come to buildings which do provide high standard of well-being in the parks. Thanks.
Amazing. I feel I should give you my buildings to manage, Raj. Amazing. It's terrific what you're being able to achieve.
Manu,
really, really nice.
Irfan is doing the same thing, don't worry.
Thank you, Raj. Thank you. My next question is going to be addressed to Ram Chandnani. And Ram, the question is, what suggestions would you have for developers and occupiers for future-proofing their office portfolios?
I think Raj managed to answer that to some extent in the short term. But I think the short-term measures for occupiers, and depends whether your portfolio is occupied by a single occupier in a standalone building, or you have a larger park where you have multiple occupiers and you have multiple tenancies in those parks. I think today the biggest thing that developers have to focus and partner with their clients on is really seeing how they're providing a safe and secure environment for the clients to actually come back to work. That's the most important thing in the clients, in the CRE's head's mind and as employees' minds. While if you look at some of the China situations, and one of the reasons why China was successful in overcoming this COVID situation in a quarter is because one, the government obviously had stringent measures. And if you know that their platforms, their technology platforms, Alipay as well as WeChat, with the technology providers, the 5G providers, were able to identify which were the communities which had, and they were able to zone them whether they were red or orange or green from a hot spotting perspective, to really curtail the contamination and ensure that people were staying back at home. Obviously, with the experience of SARS, the Chinese have gone through one challenge in an epidemic, in a somewhat epidemic situation like this. And from a pollution level perspective, they've been used to wearing masks. In India, people are not used to wearing masks. So these are 3-4 things from a China perspective that have helped the Chinese overcome this. From an India context, if you look at it, the key most important aspect for the occupiers today is that, am I going to be going into a safe environment? While a client will do whatever he has to do within his environment to make sure he sanitizes the facilities, ensuring that social distancing is met, rotation of employees, alternative day working, team A, team B, team C, depend on organization to organization, they're putting those processes. It's important for the developer partners to obviously assure the clients and partner with the clients on how are they managing and communicate that, because I totally believe that a developer-landlord relationship is a long-term relationship. And it's very important for the occupier to get confidence with their developer partner that they're able to provide the facilities, isolation zones if there was a case in the building, what safety measures the developers are providing to enhance the sanitization and security for employees to get in. Obviously, people are not going to rush in overnight once the lockdown opens. They'll come back to work in a safe and over a period of time where you'll see some companies look at 5% of workforce starting to work. Also, transport, Raj Menda. A lot of companies provide own transport on their own, and some of the employees use public transport. I think this is going to become a big challenge going forward. And over a period of time, you will see some of the clients looking at, rather than single facilities that they occupy, to look at some amount of hub and spoke in the immediate future to curtail this. So these are some of the things that the occupier will have to partner with their developers to make sure that they're getting the confidence of getting people back to work, and what the developer is doing in terms of enhancements within the property management or the facilities management bit from their side, to give the client confidence, because there are GDPR issues on data. You can't save that data, personal data of people. So there are those challenges also. But the key is, while you could have visitors come and do self-declaration, how much is that going to help? You got to be very tactful on visitors coming into the park. And if you're in a multi-tenanted building, while you as company A are providing a safe environment to your employees, you got to make sure that company B also is also providing those similar standards that you're providing, so those challenges don't take, future challenges don't happen. So it's important that the developer plays a very important role of making sure that communication with its occupiers, the CRE leaders who occupy multi-tenanted facilities, communicate amongst themselves to make sure it's a win-win for all going forward. This is from a short-term perspective. There are some long-term things on how companies will future-proof their portfolio, etc. And I'll talk about that a little later.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ram. Great perspective on both sides of user and builder. My next question is going to be addressed to Mr. Arunji. Sir, from an occupier's perspective, would you prefer being in an independent building or a campus?
That's, it doesn't really matter, because it'll be horses for courses, because, I have multiple legal entities, and the requirements can be small to big and very big. So campuses, of course, is a dream for any real estate professional, because, there's so much independence, and you can design the building, you can do so much things, and there's so much open space, etc. Standard, you're not dependent on the SOPs of either the landlord or your neighbors, who may not be as aware or as cautious as you are. If they are not, if they commit some fault, whether it is a fire alarm or even a confirmed case of COVID, the entire building will get sealed, etc. So obviously there are a lot of advantages in having an independent building with independent control. So that is one, and I think we have spoken about the designs, etc., and contactless design, etc. Whether it is doors or dispensers, etc., and the protocols for screening and protocols for entry of vehicles and people, etc. But I think there's one important thing which probably will come into focus much more significantly. That's the air conditioning design. And Yatin is on the call, and to some extent Raji also alluded to design changes, because it's important that while we have this pandemic, COVID-19 as it is called, this will become an inherent part of any BCP manual of any company going forward. And as of now, we are talking about COVID-19, so there can be mutations, there can be new pandemics, etc., whatever. So I think we'll have to be prepared in future for any such eventuality which is related to microorganisms. And in that, air conditioning plays a very important role, whether it is dilution of the count, viral count or bacterial count or microorganism count, or arresting or killing that, whether it is the fresh air intake or the filtration processes or ionization processes, etc., which till now have been not very, fairly neglected. Because you bring in more fresh air than pollution, you bring in pollutants as well. You increase the air conditioning load as well. So I think all these things will become an inherent part, whether it is a campus building or a multi-tenanted building. So that is that I foresee as coming in, and I think Rajji mentioned about and Irfan ji also about the FAR and the densities. National Building Code has been talking about 100 square feet to a workstation, which has not been respected by a lot of occupants. We have cases where occupancy, then the density is as low as 45, 60, 70 square feet. So I suspect that will become more forceful, and the compliances will become better. And like in Philippines, the norm is 60 to 65 square feet to a call center workstation. So I suspect that may increase by 20-25% as a regulatory requirement. Which will be good for real estate, because the real estate requirements for the same number of people would go higher. But a lot of things will have to be done by builders as far as high-end engineering is concerned, especially in air conditioning. And I think Yatin mentioned about small modules, etc. That may also become a way of life, that rather than having central air conditioning, you have, rather than a 50,000 or 100,000 square feet floor plate, we have modules of, let's say, 5,000 square feet each with independent air conditioning, etc., whether it is package units or whatever, so that, containment remains limited to those modules rather than the entire floor or the entire building, which again, coming back to the whether it is a multi-tenanted building or a campus building. So these are some of the things, though we are all on the learning curve, and I suspect it's just the beginning of this curve, and we'll be learning and adapting and adopting a lot of things, and over next few quarters, to my mind. But quite an interesting challenge.
Thank you, Arunji. My last question today will be to Yatin Patel. Yatin, what design changes would you recommend for campuses and also for independent buildings going forward?
Manu, like I mentioned earlier, so for campus designs and independent buildings, starting from out to in, we will want to see more modularity in design and ease of construction. Coming from that perspective, that we will still need to have fewer people at site. We will need to get to modularity of design. We will need to build steel structures. So we design processes to be able to get things done very quickly with minimal amount of people at site. In terms of planning, we will also need to look at our parking strategies, because when we have work from home, which we all don't know and are going to still debate, we don't know whether that will continue to be the norm or whether that is going to stay as a long-term phenomenon. We will need to look at our parking strategies, because currently it takes up a huge amount of real estate and cost on construction. So arrival experiences for employees also, as Raj mentioned, contactless experience for entry of buildings, getting into the car parking lot, into the elevator bank, contactless, getting into your workspace and at your workstation. Those will become important features, and technology will become an integrated part of architectural design as well. So we will see smarter parking, bus parking, and as Raj mentioned, vendor management and security areas also become crucial in campus planning now. They will become dedicated staging areas, sanitization spaces for material movement, vendors for fit outs, for couriers, for parcels that come in, as well as visitors. So the entry and arrival experiences also become important. The other thing that I would like to also point out here, and which when we are doing independent campuses or independent buildings, I think most of the offices today, or to be future-proof, will need raised floors. We are already doing a lot of places with raised floors, but there are very few buildings that are built to designed for raised floors. So you always normally see that there is a step up when you're getting into an office space. From the lift lobby, you step up. And if you're designing independent buildings and campuses, I think one should look at getting a drop done so that the levels of lift landings and the office floors are maintained. In doing that, we will allow for flexibility and modular design on office floor plates as well. And as Raj also mentioned earlier, cafeteria management also becomes an important aspect where we have to integrate technology so that we cut on the number, the queue that gets generated and the crowds that follow. There will be also the need for work cafes or smaller cafes getting created at various floors in a multi-story building. Also, we will have the need, when we say to provide a safe and secure environment, technologies that will monitor water from a potability perspective, and process water for Laguna and pollution. Air quality monitoring for CO2 and risk of carbon monoxide and VOC, humidity and particulate matter. So all of these things will need to get mapped. Surface conditions for doors, handles, elevator buttons, and common areas. And even we will look at UVC light integration. Wireless lighting controls and other controls will become a norm. So I mean, there's lots and lots of more things that
I
will
can
happen.
imagine. Absolutely.
Manu, I just wanted to add. I wanted to add a couple of things, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I think from an overall portfolio planning perspective, I think most important while occupiers go through this current period and decide to go back in phases to work, etc. I think long-term portfolio planning, understanding labor analytics a little more, commute analysis, a lot more important for clients. While work from home policies will get transformed over a period of time on productivity, etc. What's very important is how many companies are willing to make additional investments on technology, because technology is for you to even look at any amount of remote working, you have to make a lot of investment of technology, data security, etc. And there are a lot of companies already doing that. But I think the entire portfolio will look at benchmarking to market, you look at your hub and spokes model, you look at independent sites, because it's no more the normal BCP norm that we've been used to saying if there was a flood, if there was an earthquake, what happens? This has affected India as a whole, as a globe as a whole. So the BCP norms dramatically change going forward. So portfolio resiliency is very, very important. Labor analytics is very important, where your people come. And in a lot of cases, you could find a lot more integrated developments which have a combination of housing and office do well. Some of the Irfan's done Shantiniketan, which is a very good integrated. Brigade's done. Quite a few developers have done integrated development. So you will see some quantum look at integrated developments. There are some of the tier 2 cities in India which are good role models. Unfortunately, the leasing activity has to pick up. The GIFT city is a good example of an integrated development in India. So you will see a lot more emphasis on integrated developments. The question is, can we provide housing for all within those environments? Because you can only provide a certain scale and size. And clients will look at the overall portfolios across cities, tier 1 cities, tier 2 cities. If you look at today's environment, there's very limited ready to move in supply today. And it's not the 2008 situation. And I remember someone asking me saying, how different is it from 2008? In 2008, we did see a lot of vacancy because developers also were speculatively building quite a bit, keeping in demand. Despite having such high levels of demand and the absorption hitting a record of 63 million square feet last year, developers have been building in phases. I think 2 cities which are seeing some quantum of speculative supply are Hyderabad to some extent, but again, that's happening in phases and some extent in Navi Mumbai. But otherwise, you're seeing corporate occupiers, and Hyderabad's demand's gone up to 13 million from a historical low of 2 to 3 million previously. But I truly believe portfolio resiliency is important. Clients will maintain monthly, quarterly reviews of their portfolio. How is their technology platform working? You'll look at clients who will move away from data centers being within their premises to off-site data centers. That's going to be a game changer. While developers will work on addressing maybe home offices in the future within their development facility into the residential developments, maybe convert puja rooms to home offices, etc. But that's a long-term view. There will be some disruption in terms of work from home, but overall, I would truly believe portfolio resiliency is very, very important going forward, and how occupiers look at their portfolio from employee demographics, commute analysis, etc., which will really change the game for them, looking at India as a whole.
Thank you, Ram. I'm already overextended on time, and we have about 150 questions already. So I'm going to hand this over just now to my son Aditya. Raj, do you want to say something?
Yeah, Manu, I just wanted to add one point. I find that in our business of co-works, which is in the co-working space, a lot of clients have already started for asking for temp space for a few months for the business contingency and continuity. Because when this government is now mandating 50% occupancy in the office, so that there's no social distancing, until all the new equipments are put into place, we are finding that they are wanting space in co-work similarly, which has got a similar layout of a less congested area. So surprisingly, our co-working is getting a lot of traction for multinationals for this contingency planning for at least 3 to 4 months till the new additional furniture they're seeking is retrofitted back into their offices. The work has to still go on. So there's a huge demand in co-working, coincidentally, which was not anticipated as an outcome of COVID. Thanks.
You're right, Raj. You will see some amount of occupiers going into flex environment immediately, because if your current facility is located in a hot zone for any reason, you want to make sure that you have another BCP in that same city if you only have one site to go into a flex environment. So flex will see some increase, but the key is who are the flex partners who are giving comfort to their clients on how they're maintaining their facilities. I know you run a very good show. Your team runs a very good show in terms of your flex environment. So clients will look at some quantum of flex to meet immediate needs while they look at their long-term strategies. No doubt about it.
Amazing. Thank you, Ram, for that. Thanks, Raj.
We can go on, Manu. There's so much to talk. Yeah. I'm sure all of us, Arun has enough to share.
We will go on, but I want to take time from a Q&A because we have 150 questions already in. Wow, so I'm going to shift from me to my son Aditya. Aditya is going to come on now and handle the Q&A really. So let's just, is it okay with all the panelists if we take about 10-12 minutes more on Q&A, sir?
Yeah, fine with me. Yeah, fine with me.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Over to you, Aditya. Aditya, can you come on, please?
Yeah, thanks. I'm here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you for sharing really, really great insight. Amazing learnings for everyone in the attendees. We've had 1,500 people today. So really, thank you for being here. Just few questions that have come from some of the Q&A people who have asked. This is from Irfan sir. Quick question on what commercial real estate sectors are expected to perform well in the future, like warehousing or retail. What do you think is the future post-COVID?
Interesting. Irfan?
Yeah, it's addressed to me, doesn't matter. I'll answer that. Now he's talking about different asset classes. Now you see, warehousing, of course, will always be evergreen because the more and more you need the warehousing space because a lot of online shopping will increase post-COVID. A lot more companies will come into the space. So warehousing will be the next big thing that will happen. Now, if you're talking about the other asset classes like retail malls, it's not the end of the retail malls. It's only at this moment, at this juncture, the pain will be there and it will continue for at least 6 to 9 months. After that, people will definitely want to go out. They'll definitely want to celebrate. They'll definitely want to have some entertainment. It's not that they're going to get cooped up or become hermits in their houses. Now, the fear is there. Second thing is, reality is that they need to do the necessary protection. So even after the lockdown is lifted, even after the government allows people to open the malls, there will be a sort of slow traction that will pick up, and it will take some time for that to take off. But then once it happens, like I'm told in China, moment they've opened up in Wuhan and other cities, now there's some revenge shopping going on. But I don't know how India can cope up with revenge shopping, because as it is, there's a big difference between the economic situation of the citizens in China and India. But I think our citizens also have got used to the good things in life, and they are now feeling that withdrawal symptoms, and they are definitely raring to go. Now it will take some time, and I think we also have to exercise caution, and a whole lot of steps need to be done also to sanitize the spaces, to make sure the spaces are safe. Things like even common areas, facilities like toilets, food courts, all the requirement of space will just increase, or number of seats will have to get reduced. So all that will be a part of the thing. But if you ask me, the safest in all the asset classes between retail, hospitality, IT offices, I would say if you are invest in an office space. And of course, if you are also wanting to do some large warehousing, I'm sure that will give you good returns in the long term.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Karan Bakshi, for that question.
I think Manu, from a lighter, of our Irfan's putting it a lighter way, in revenge shopping, Indians will make sure they don't buy Chinese goods.
I hope so too. Really.
Our style of revenge shopping.
I knew that was coming.
Next question is from Mr. Amit Porwal. Thank you for the question. This is to Arun. Do you think occupiers will start looking at multiple smaller spaces to spread and de-risk rather than taking a single large facility?
Yep, I think that's a very interesting option, and very likely because just taking a step back, my transportation cost in India is more than my rental cost. So transportation has become such a big animal for almost this entire industry, and so this definitely calls for, and this is an opportunity actually, this pandemic, where people are actually not coming to office, that, why can't we have 10 different offices in NCR or 10 different offices in Hyderabad rather than 4 offices or 3 offices, and smaller offices, whether it is, instead of a 2,000-seater or a 4,000-seater, we can always look at 500-seaters and spread all over. Hub and spoke, I think, was mentioned by Ram. So very, very interesting option. And yes, and if people are working from home and they have a need to come to office, probably 1 day in a week or 2 days in a week, then why should they be traveling 1 hour or 2 hours to reach that central office? A small office with much better infrastructure as compared to their homes, a 500-seater or even a 50-seater in let's say, South Delhi or East Delhi or West Delhi, rather than going to Noida or Gurgaon, and similarly in Bangalore and Hyderabad. So I think this will come, and I think this kind of demand is definitely going to be part of portfolio planning of a lot of companies.
As I mentioned, portfolio planning is going to be very, very important and re-looked at now. Clients will look at labor analytics, which is very, very important. Where are your people coming from? As well as commuter analysis, because those were only looked from a cost perspective earlier. Today, keeping in mind public transport, private transport, as Arun mentioned, are going to be re-looked at. Some clients will adopt to hub and spoke models, no doubt. Also, historically why the reason why companies wanted to bring everyone together from an overall culture, organization, feel perspective. While they will still have maybe one large center and opportunities to bring people whenever they need to bring them all in one facility, they would look at some of these hub and spoke models. Again, depends from city to city, client to client, business to business for sure.
Aditya, I don't know how much time you have. How many questions should you go? One or two quick ones?
2 minutes. Last question, if I can.
You can.
Sorry. Yeah, so the last question, this is thanks for Ram actually, and or the entire panel, whoever would like to answer this. As funding becomes more hard to get for the real estate sector, what do you think is the future of REITs in India? Do you see a delay in listing, and will the return expectations decrease due to the pandemic?
Can I request Raj to answer that, because he's the one on the hot seat right now?
Sure.
Okay, I think I'll give a slightly varied answer. It may take more than a minute, but the point is like this: today, what has happened is the interest rates world over have tanked even further. There's potential that the interest rate may go to sub-zero. That means money is available quite cheap. You all only need a few asset-backed securities available to raise collaterals on this kind of money. So the point is, most importantly, the asset prices internationally have tanked quite dramatically. I'm talking about good quality assets which have tanked anywhere between 20 to 40% in different parts of the world. I do not see why investors are going to love India in the short term, where our Indian prices, to our good luck, have not tanked. The only differential arbitrage they're getting is on the currency, because the currency no doubt has tanked, so it just makes it marginally cheaper. But our assets have not tanked. None of our big developers who are putting out grade A assets under development are looking at even revaluing it downwards. So I do not see them even stepping into India simply because they have low-hanging fruit available outside to pick up assets somewhere else. Now, when it comes to REIT, you'll be surprised that even like Irfan said earlier, the only Indian listed REIT is actually doing quite well. It's still trading ahead of its listing position, which is very good. And that only basically shows the asset compression value is good. But having said that, again, if you compare it REIT to REIT across other international portfolios, other REITs have tanked by 30% because of either loss of rent or loss of being able to fill their space, which you're not even sure they'll be able to fill it in the short term. So if you do a REIT to REIT comparison and you're looking at it from overseas with the international capital, again, there is no reason for you to bring the money and put it here. So, will REITs last post-COVID getting set right and, post everybody having the fix in terms of the medication? For sure, REITs in India is sustainable because the demand for office in India is still booming. And as Ram has said, the need for office will increase by virtue of all these things. And I'm a positive believer that this office is here to stay and it will come back. So the REIT is too early to do now, but I think post, all these low-hanging fruits getting knocked off, and money will come back into the country. Thanks.
Yeah, funding has been a concern over the last few years in India. So obviously today it's most important for the tenant, for the developer to get a quality tenant, a pre-commitment to get funding much more easier. Obviously, large developers in India have those relationships with their banks to go and raise capital today, construction finance. But it's going to be a lot more easier if you have a grade A occupier pre-committing to you on space for you to really go and raise that money without a problem. So no doubt the developers will want to partner with clients, look at pre-commitments, etc. From a construction perspective. The other model, what Irfanji mentioned, was pre-selling, which is RERA compliant commercial space. And that's a different model that we'd look at. And a lot of developers in India have started to relook at that because there's only so much funding you can get. So the opportunity is that you want to create assets with pre-commitments, which you will eventually list in your REIT as things go forward, as well as you'll do some amount of pre-sale to take care of your investor market going forward. So obviously funding will continue to be some amount of pain, no doubt about it, as you get further access to cheaper capital, I would say international cheaper capital. And the private equity funds are still very, very bullish on the commercial office sector. And this is one of the sectors that we've seen a lot of emphasis in the last few years, and that will continue, no doubt about it.
Thank you, Ram. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay,
Thanks.
should we close this?
Please go ahead. Yeah, I was just going to hand over to you. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Gentlemen, thank you so much. There are another 147 unanswered questions, but we need to call it a day. So thank you for sharing your valuable insights about the current situation and a glimpse into the future. I am sure we are greatly benefited by these takeaways and will approach our businesses with far more clarity going ahead. The COVID pandemic has taught us ways to quickly cope with unprecedented crises, and we are sure we'll come out of this much stronger and better prepared for the future. Once again, thank you, gentlemen, for your participation and good day. Thank you, sir. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thanks,
Manohar.
everybody.
Thanks for organizing this. It was a
Thank
pleasure.
you. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you, sir.
Manohar.
Everyone
Bye.
for listening in.
Thanks, Manu. Thank you, everyone.
And with you.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.